It warms the heart to know there are those who continue to add light to our community. The Jewish Federation applauds the good and important work of the Oklahoma City National Memorial.
We are so grateful to David Gregory for joining us tonight for this very special conversation about how his faith began to be revealed through the very story that we tell here each and every day. As a lead NBC correspondent, David covered the trial of Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. And it was there in Denver, as you saw, that he met and fell in love with one of the lead prosecutors, Beth Wilkinson.
We did have the privilege of having David and Beth here for the 20th anniversary. It was great to walk through the museum with you and your family. Tell us what that experience meant to you.
Well, I mean, it was very emotional. I mean, to bring our kids here, it's an opportunity for them to put some context and get kind of deeper meaning to something that was so incredibly meaningful to Beth. Her experience in public service was never more important than being a prosecutor and pursuing justice in this case. When we were going to get married and then we had young kids, we faced a question that a lot of us face, which is how are you going to raise your kids in an interfaith marriage? It was very important to me that my kids be Jewish. She said okay, she was not interested in converting, but she asked me a question I thought was very important. She says, look, I know what you are, I know who you are, but what is it that you believe? And it was that question that really inspired me to dig deeper, to study.
Tell me about the difference between being a spiritual person and a religious person.
Well, so I have to tell you, I mean, I feel like as a religious and spiritual person, I am constantly in motion. I mean, people say, oh, well, you wrote this book, do you have this all figured out? And I said, no, not by a long shot. I mean, to me, the path of faith is a path of discovery. It's really a path of humility in that I think it only magnifies my own weaknesses, my own understanding of my flaws and how weak I am and how much I need God's grace in my life. And I see faith as kind of a path to be who I ultimately hope to be.
Faith played a huge part in this story, in our healing in Oklahoma City. You look around what happened today in California, you look around the world, there's something every week.
Yeah.
How do we talk more openly about faith without being scorned?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I think it's there's incredible stories of forgiveness that we've seen that's come out of this tragedy here. That's hard for a lot of us sometimes to understand, but we understand. I think anyone of faith understands that we forgive in order to be forgiven. We tend to talk about faith in ways that are incredibly divisive, whether it's around social issues or in what's going on in the world with ISIS and Islamic fundamentalism. We need to have a way to talk honestly without labeling each other as bigoted. We need to be able to search, for answers and search for understanding. To me, the joy of this book was to be able to have conversations with faith leaders of different faiths and say, tell me about how I search for God. How do I deepen my faith? What have you learned? What advice would you give me? This community, going through the pain that it went through 20 years ago and still goes through, fundamentally understood that, that God was close and that God was crying and that God maybe didn't prevent it from happening, but that God could be close and could be present in those who were healing, taking it one day at a time, could be close by surrounding this community with love from around the world, and that could bring community closer together.